On July 11, 1960, J.B. Lippincott and Company published To Kill a Mockingbird in Philadelphia, releasing a novel that felt at once like a courtroom summons and a hymn. Harper Lee's spare, luminous account of Scout Finch, Atticus Finch, and the trial of Tom Robinson arrived during the charged years of Jim Crow and the rising civil rights movement, and in 1961 it won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. That formal recognition pushed the book into national conversation. Its portrayal of racial injustice in a fictional Macomb, Alabama, reshaped classroom debates, church conversations, and legal imaginations. Throughout the 1960s and beyond, law schools, newspapers, and civic forums wrestled with its moral lessons. Lee, born Nell Harper Lee in Monroeville, Alabama on April 28, 1926, became an unlikely cultural lodestar, quietly private and resistant to celebrity. She helped her childhood friend Truman Capote with research for In Cold Blood, but she avoided the spotlight herself, giving few interviews and retreating into a guarded, almost sepia-toned privacy that made every rumor of new work feel like an event. The novel's reach widened with the 1962 film, directed by Robert Mulligan and starring Gregory Peck, and by the late 20th century, To Kill a Mockingbird had sold tens of millions of copies and earned a permanent place on American syllabi. This precise constellation, publication in Philadelphia on July 11, 1960, a 1961 Pulitzer, a reclusive author whose silence amplified expectation, sets the scene and prepares the viewer for the fraught return that would arrive decades later. On July 14, 2015, HarperCollins released Go Set a Watchman in New York, and the literary world recoiled as if a sepia-era portrait had been turned on its head. Marketed as a newly discovered novel connected to Kill a Mockingbird, Watchman arrived with blunt facts. HarperCollins announced the book and its release date, and confirmed that Harper Lee-born Nell Harper Lee, on April 28, 1926, was the author. Lee was 89 that summer. Readers expecting a gentle sequel instead encountered an Atticus Finch, who, in scenes set during the 1950s, voiced views sympathetic to segregation and impatient with the civil rights movement. That revelation upended the gilded moral icon created in the 1960 novel published by J.B. Lippincott and Company on July 11, 1960. Subscribe. Maybe it would have saved Atticus's reputation. HarperCollins and Lee's representatives presented Watchman as a rediscovered manuscript, reportedly written in the mid-1950s and released as a standalone book. They offered only an outline of its provenance, saying the manuscript had surfaced among Lee's papers. Tanya Carter, identified publicly as Lee's attorney and longtime legal guardian of her literary affairs, said she had located material and consulted with Lee about publication, and HarperCollins issued a formal release confirming the July 14th publication in New York. The immediate uproar hinged on two clear flashpoints: the markedly different portrait of Atticus Finch and the murky trail of custody for the manuscript. Scholars, journalists, and members of Lee's family publicly questioned whether the work was an early draft of To Kill a Mockingbird or a separate, later novel, and whether Harper Lee Long, known for her reticence, had the capacity and freedom to consent to publication at age 89. Newspapers, from the New York Times to regional Alabama outlets, reported those concerns within days, turning a single publication date and a publisher's announcement into a thunderclap of legal, ethical, and literary debate that set the stage for the clashes and reckonings to come. Scholars and experienced readers quickly mapped how Go Set a Watchman aligns with and diverges from To Kill a Mockingbird, and those similarities point to an earlier draft history rather than a sober sequel. Watchman reads like a present-day narrative of Jean-Louis Finch returning to Macomb in the 1950s. An adult point of view, blunt contemporary diction, and a more episodic feel. Mockingbird, published by J.B. Lippincott and Company in Philadelphia on July 11, 1960, is shaped as a crafted childhood recollection. Its voice is Scout's retrospective narration, lyrically restrained, tighter in structure, and focused in tone. editorial records and publisher correspondence, most notably the stewardship of Tay Hohoff, the Lippincott editor who worked with Harper Lee, show prolonged revision rather than a simple continuation. Hohoff guided the manuscript toward concentrating scenes from Jean-Louise's memories, reordering material and cutting episodes that in Watchmen feel diffuse. Textual comparisons reveal recycled passages and sentences that appear in both books, but sit in different narrative contexts. Critics and scholars treat those overlaps as a common sign of revision from draft to finished novel. Characterization shifts are stark and verifiable. In Watchmen, Atticus Finch vocalizes views many contemporaneous readers read as sympathetic to segregation. In Mockingbird, Atticus is presented as a principled defense attorney during the Tom Robinson trial, his moral stature established through courtroom rhetoric and parental guidance. Tone and politics move from Watchman's candid, sometimes disillusioned register to Mockingbird's deliberate moral parable. These documentary and stylistic facts, the mid-1950s genesis, Hoff's extensive editorial role, overlapping text, and altered narrator and politics support, the view that Watchmen survives as an antecedent draft reshaped into the canonical Mockingbird, and they sharpen the dispute over what readers were offered in 2015 and who made those choices. When HarperCollins announced on February 3, 2015 that Go Set a Watchman would be published, the reaction was immediate and intense. That announcement quickly hardened into precise, prosecutable questions. Did Nell Harper Lee, born April 28, 1926 and 90 in 2016, knowingly consent to the July 14, 2015 publication? And who had custody of the manuscript when it was recovered? HarperCollins and Tanya B. Carter, publicly identified as Lee's attorney and the person who located the manuscript in 2014, said Lee authorized publication and that the novel was a rediscovered work. But within days, the New York Times, The Guardian, The Washington Post, and Alabama outlets published probing accounts documenting conflicting memories from friends, former neighbors, and scholars, and they quoted Carter on her stewardship of Lee's literary affairs. Critics pointed to verifiable facts as reasons to ask hard questions. Lee's advanced age, a decades-long aversion to publicity, and the odd provenance of a manuscript found among personal papers rather than in an archive. Legal commentators explained how power of attorney, conservatorship, or assignment of literary rights could allow a lawyer or guardian to consent to publication for an author. Journalists traced correspondence and reported that paperwork had been signed, while others pressed for clear probate or court records. Academics and editors published methodical critiques of editorial practice, arguing that the hands that guided To Kill a Mockingbird in the 1950s were not necessarily the same ones involved in the 2015 release. They linked archival questions to ethical norms about consent and authorial intent. The result was relentless media scrutiny and growing institutional unease, scholarly forums, divided bookstores, and headlines about legacy guardianship. Each verified detail, the February announcement, the 2014 recovery, Carter's role, HarperCollins' statement, tightened the narrative and pushed the story toward the legal and moral reckoning that became its public climax. The story narrows to a decisive, sepia-tinged confrontation. Textual scholars point to mid-1950s drafts, recycled passages, and Tay Hohoff's editorial fingerprints as concrete, documentable evidence that Go Set a Watchman is closely related to the manuscript reshaped into To Kill a Mockingbird, first published by J.B. Lippincott and Company in Philadelphia on July 11, 2060, and awarded the 1961 Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. At the same time, Tanya B. Carter, Lee's lawyer and custodian of her literary estate, says she found the material in 2014, consulted with Nell Harper Lee, born April 28, 1926, and authorized HarperCollins' February 3, 2015 announcement and the New York publication on July 14, 2015. Newspapers from the New York Times to The Guardian and The Washington Post reported sharply divergent witness testimony. Longtime acquaintances and some scholars questioned Lee's capacity and the provenance of the papers, while publisher statements and signed paperwork presented a competing factual claim of consent. public opinion fractured, with readers and legal commentators arguing in earnest about authorial intent, editorial practice, and how to protect an elderly, famously private author. No single account satisfies every verifiable fact, and no court overturned the publication. So the collision forces a clear reckoning. Ethical and literary duties intersect messily, and the debate shifted toward a consequential aftermath. When J.B. Lippincott and Compton's To Kill a Mockingbird, published July 11, 1960, collided publicly with HarperCollins's July 14, 2015 release of Go Set a Watchman, the reverberations were long-lasting. Amid contested provenance, disputes over Tanya B. Carter's role, and close textual comparisons by scholars, Atticus Finch, long celebrated on screen by Gregory Peck in the 1962 film, became a more complicated figure as readers weighed the principled father of Mockingbird against far less flattering passages in Watchmen. Teachers and university syllabi reworked discussions of race, authorial intent, and historical context. Some school districts and departments revised reading lists and added primary sources. Publishers, agents, and estates faced fresh scrutiny and adopted stricter provenance checks, clearer consent protocols, and tighter oversight when elderly authors or guardians were involved, while archives and libraries tightened cataloging and access standards. There were no tidy answers. The controversy left a foundational American text in a long shadow and raised a persistent question: how should we steward, interpret, and teach canonical works when new, messy evidence emerges?